Have you ever questioned a rule or a policy only to be shut down with a simple, well, that's just the way things are? In logic, this trap has a name. It is called the is-ought fallacy. It happens anytime we assume that because something is currently the practice, it automatically should be the practice. It is easy to confuse this with an appeal to tradition, but tradition relies on an emotional reverence for the past. The is-ought fallacy doesn't care about the past. It relies purely on the mechanical fact that a rule is in place right now. It is also different from an appeal to common opinion, which relies on the sheer volume of people doing something. The is-ought fallacy leans entirely on the existence of the policy itself, the pin on the map. The problem is, the mere existence of a policy provides zero logical support for its actual merit. Relying on the status quo to defend the status quo violates the basic rules of a good argument. Let's look at how this hides in casual conversation. Say Amanda wants to go to Paris for vacation, but Rick pushes back. He argues they shouldn't go because their practice has always been to visit a different country every year. To expose the mechanics of Rick's argument, we need to translate his spoken words into a formal logical structure. Here is the diagram mapping his argument. First, we have premise 1. We always visit a different country. Then, jumping to the bottom, his conclusion, we should not go to Paris. To connect that premise to that conclusion requires an invisible bridge. That bridge is hidden premise 2. The practice currently in place is the practice that should be in place. Once we drag that assumption into the light, we can see exactly why the logic fails. This same structural flaw appears in higher stakes scenarios. Imagine a parent arguing that marijuana must remain illegal, citing only the fact that it is currently against the law. This diagram shows a closed loop of circular logic. The arguer starts with, "it is illegal," uses that to claim, "therefore it is wrong," which leads to, "therefore it should be illegal," pointing right back to where we started. They are using a current law as its own independent moral justification. People rarely state this is-ought connection out loud. To expose the weakness of the argument, you have to actively listen and manually extract that hidden premise yourself. Let's test this skill on institutional inertia. A professor dismisses a proposal for student governance by saying, "A college is just not a very democratic institution. Let's not tamper with the institutional structure." Take a moment to map the professor's argument in standard form. See if you can find the hidden premise. Feel free to pause the video here. Let's build the map. We start with premise 1, college is not democratic, and down at the bottom, the conclusion, we shouldn't tamper with it. The missing link, the only way to make this jump, is hidden premise 2. Because it is not currently democratic, it ought not to be democratic. The professor offered no actual reasons against student governance. By uncovering this specific hidden premise, we expose that their argument is just inertia masquerading as logic. Once you spot this trap, defeating it in real time is straightforward. Explicitly point out that the status quo isn't evidence. Then demand an independent reason for the policy. If the arguer refuses to yield, you can deploy a specific rhetorical tool known as the absurd counterexample. Take their core logic, that whatever happens to be the status quo is automatically correct, and apply it to speeding. Since the majority of drivers currently break the speed limit, then breaking the speed limit must be the correct thing to do. When they reject that absurd conclusion, they are forced to reject their own rule. Here is a repeatable framework for you to use in future debates. It comes down to 3 steps: identify, extract, and attack. First, identify. Ask yourself, is the current reality being used as the only proof? Second, extract. Mentally write out their hidden premise that the status quo equals what is correct. Finally, attack. Demand actual reasons, or drop an absurd counterexample to break the loop. Mastering the is-ought fallacy shifts the burden of proof back where it belongs. It empowers you to challenge the default state of the world and demand actual, logical reasons for the rules we live by.